If I had to choose anybody that I admire, it would probably be someone that I played against sort of 12, 13 years ago when he was at his peak, Jason Twist. He was a two-time world champion, and I was lucky enough to play against Jason a few times back in the early 2000s. And look, he was a great player, and he was a nice guy. He was humble in victory, gracious in defeat, and yeah, just a brilliant player. So if I had to pick anyone, Jason Twist. That's a fairly easy one for me. 8 ball, I've been playing it since I was 10, which is 23 years ago. It's a game I grew up with, and I played many hours when I was a teenager. And 9 ball is good for fun, but I haven't played much of it. The other game I do like though is snooker. I probably only get to play maybe once a week, but it's really good for my pool, especially with the queuing aspect. So I do enjoy snooker, but 8 ball has always been my game. I use a cue made by Andy Bream. He's a pool player here in Perth, or he used to be, and his brand was Ozcues. He made me a cue. He's made me a couple of cues actually, but the last one he made me was when I was 16. So I've been using this one for about 17 years, and I love it. It's an ebony ash cue. I'd really like to get a replica made of it. That's how much I like it. It's like an extension of my arm. Yeah, the tip, I've always used an Elkmaster tip. Haven't sort of needed anything different. But at the moment I've got a Talisman on, which I like, but I'm not too fussy on tips. So Elkmaster and Talisman. Ozcues, great cues. I think the main thing I like in a player is a player that doesn't give up, and they believe in themselves no matter how far behind they are. Someone that can fight all the way to the end. Doesn't matter if they're 8-1 behind, 9-2 behind. At the end of the day, your opponent still has to get those last couple of frames, and I just don't like it when people give up. I really don't like it. If you want to get to a top level, you've got to fight your way out of those situations, and you've got to realise that they're winnable. So anyone that believes in themselves and has that fighting spirit, that's probably my favourite trait or quality in a player. Just anybody who is a top level player, I think I enjoy beating. So if I get to play, someone like Justin or Joel or Ben, haven't beaten Ben for a while, Rusty, any of those guys are great to beat because I know I'm going well if I do beat them. And I can use it as a bit of a measuring stick for myself to see how well I'm going. But other than that, any player that spits the dummy when they lose, I love beating as well, because they've just got to be a bit more gracious in defeat. I think we're headed on the right track. We've got some big tournaments happening around Australia, and a future one coming up pretty soon in May. Yeah, the online streaming is fantastic. Hopefully, if we keep going the way we're going, we can attract a big sponsor. But I do think one thing that we need to do is present ourselves a little bit better on camera, and that's just maybe start with trousers and a collared shirt would be great for all the people that are watching around the world or the country, and also potential sponsors who might be watching as well, which would be a good start. But plenty of players involved, which is great. I think players know what players want, and the more players we can get involved in helping out, the better. And I think we're definitely headed on the right track in that respect. I think my biggest strength would be my temperament at the table, staying calm and cool and collected. No matter how bad things are, or no matter how bad a shot I play, tend to keep quite calm, keep my poker face, and it's not something that your opponent wants to see either. It kind of frustrates a couple of people, which is great. No point in getting upset, so I just got to keep a level head and get on with the job. My biggest weakness would probably be a lack of focus and energy when I'm playing against a weaker player, someone that's not a top player, where I don't necessarily have to focus 100%. It's not a good thing, but it's something that I'll work on. Back in 1999, when I was at the Junior World Titles in England, or in Blackpool, I went over there with James Delahunty and Gary Wilcox. I can't remember if those guys were with me at the time, but I was walking around the hotel with my camera, and I knocked on Neville Lovis's door, and all I was going to do was just take a photo of him, like a candid shot, and open the door, and there was Neville Lovis chucking a moonie at me. Anyway, I got the photo, but that image has been stuck in my head for the best part of 16 years, and I'll never forget it. And my biggest regret, knocking on Neville's door that night. There isn't one single thing that I think was my greatest achievement, but the 2003 to 2004 sort of period, 1 year period, was probably my greatest achievement overall. I won the Australian singles title, and then I beat Gareth Potts the following day in the Pro-Am final. And then the following year I backed that up with the top percentage at the Australian titles, and at the same time the World Cup was being held, and I won the Player of the Series in that as well. So just that whole year was me at my best. As my greatest achievement. I'd love to get back there one day. Probably won't happen, but that's just one whole year that I won't forget ever. I'd love to say win another Australian title, but I don't have any plans of going to the Nationals just yet, so I'm not sure if I'm going to go back there or what's going to happen there. But at the moment I'm enjoying the tournaments, the money games and the weekend tournaments. So my two goals would have to be to win a Big Guns, which I just fell short on in its first year in 2010. It was a great final against Ben Noonan. So I want to go one step further. I want to win a Big Guns and definitely win the Western National.